Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Podcast Juice. My name is Michael Dean. And joining me today, I guess you can see who's joining me today because you see all these lovely people over here. But let me introduce them. And of course, you're listening to the podcast on Prince, so we thank you for that. But joining me today, first off, we'll start with the ladies. Miss Violet Brown, how are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So what's going on with you these days?
The usual, just got back from Minneapolis and probably going to go back next month. I'm hoping that they do something for that Welcome to America release and working. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you again. You know, looking beautiful as always. We love our sisters. So thank you so much. And also joining us the first time being on this show, and I'll tell a little backstory about her. But joining us today is Alina. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much. So here's a funny story. My daughter, who is just starting college this year, she was visiting me. She lives in Hawaii. And she was here. I think this was like last year. And we were watching YouTube. And I was like, I don't know why I asked her, but I was like, show me what did you be watching on YouTube? Because I watch a lot of YouTube, right? So she started showing me these videos. And then she shows me this video of this young lady. And she was like, I think it was like a dorm room or I got my dorm type of thing. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I see why you're watching that because you want to go to college and whoop-de-woo, right? So I don't know how I think maybe we did a live show, Aunt Pooh or something. And I think you were either in the chat or you had called in or commented or something.
I do all that. I called in once to talk to you guys, but I'm actively a commenter.
Yeah. And then I don't know how somehow I clicked on the picture. I saw you had a YouTube page. So I was looking. I was like, wait a minute. I remember my daughter showed me this video. So it's just a weird sort of thing. I was like, you know what? I don't want to let that. That's not just some coincidence thing. I'm like, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
World.
So welcome to the show. Obviously, you're a Prince fan. And what's been going on with you these days? I think you were just in Minneapolis too, right?
I was just in Minneapolis. I met Violet. And that was cool. And so many other cool people. That was my first time visiting. And it was an amazing, amazing trip. And I'm definitely going to have to make it a yearly visit because the amount of fun I had is like uncomparable. Amazing.
Wow. And I had no idea you met Violet before. So
yeah, again, just recently.
Small world.
Just recently. No coincidences.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. All right. Also joining me straight out of South Central, Mr. Aunt Pooh. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm learning. Doesn't do any good to complain. It's about working it like a job and pushing forward.
Okay.
Always forward.
I feel you on that. And I know what you're talking about. So we appreciate that. Well, here's the reason why we're here today. We're going to talk about the second Prince album titled Prince. And, you know, my thinking was there's still a lot of people, newer people that are getting into Prince that are listening for the first time. Excuse me. They have heard of Prince before, obviously, but never really dived into it and just maybe heard some of the songs because they come up in pop culture so much. And I thought, you know what? Why don't we sort of dial it back a little bit? We're not going to do a symposium or, you know, we're not trying to, you know, I'm not going to sit here and play myself. But what we'll do is give our opinions about this and what we thought about it and you know, in the context of speaking to a person who's just getting into Prince. And I didn't want to start the first album because I think we've done a show talking about that before. But I definitely wanted to start here at this album because I think there's a lot of landmark songs on this album. And so we're going to talk about the second Prince album. So there you go. So with that said, when was this album released? So the Prince album was released on October 19th, 1979, which for a lot of people, myself included, that was a whole nother world back then. That's when I was a kid back then. And I will admit, back at this point, I had no idea who Prince was. If I remember seeing the cover of that album somewhere and I saw the word Prince, I literally thought, and this is a young mind thing, I thought he was some sort of Arabian prince or something because he just, in my mind, with the hair, I was like, oh, he's like with the magic carpet or something. And that is as far as my young mind. I have not heard the music. So I had no idea. But I was just like, oh, that's a real Prince or something, and didn't pay attention to it. But years later, when he's obviously started to blow up, I went back and got this album. So that's kind of the way I want to talk about this. So with all of that said, I'm going to go to Aunt Pooh first, and I'm going to ask you this question. One, when was the first time you heard the second Prince album, Prince?
Well, of course, obviously, I Want to Be Your Lover is a classic R&B, maybe even disco-ish track, depending on how you take that. So, I mean, I heard that song from 1990, maybe 1993 when the hits were released. I see Violet like, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm one of the youngins on the podcast juice panel. So sorry.
I didn't hear it in 79.
So you heard it when the hits came out. Is that when you?
Yeah, that's when I heard that song. But I didn't hear the full Prince album till around 2001, 2002, 2003. Of course, with Napster, Lime. What's the other one? I can't think of it. And I know Prince probably was trying to sue me, but hey, you didn't catch me, sir. You didn't catch me.
Lord. All right.
So when I heard the album, then of course, I had to go about and get to the culture shock of me being from R&B, gangster rap, that mid '90s music, and having.
Oh, y'all beating them kids over there now. We're gonna let them figure that out. We're getting close to. It's close to Father's Day, man. Get some order in the house.
There you go. So. So now that I had the sophisticated ear, so to speak, because I listened to Around the World in the Day. Well, when Around the World Day came out, I did hear some of those songs in 85, 86-ish. And I was like, okay, no, next. Because I was used to, Friday night videos and then the MTV area and radio, if you don't see it there or you don't hear it on radio, then you don't. My concept was, okay, it ain't worth it. It ain't good enough. Now I'm older and I realize how the game is played. So when I heard all of those songs and, again, being exposed to 1999, to Purple Rain, to, of course, Sign of the Times and Parade, when I went back and I heard the full album and those songs, I was just like, it's just amazing that this person could truly be in what some would call funk, but absolutely be in R&B and put out a great R&B album with, in my opinion, some timeless songs. I mean, we already know one of them, which later somebody picked up and won a Grammy with, and I Feel For You. Right. And I mean, I don't know how far you want me to go with this, but okay, cool. So and then the other aspect of it is that I know, and I'm not trying to go too far back with For You, but he didn't really have a lot of rock on there. So you get I Want to Be Your Lover, and then, because I'm going to play it in sequence. And the next song is Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad, which has that entire guitar all the way through and is a rocker. And I'm sure probably at the time, people were probably saying, oh, he's trying to be Kiss, or he's trying to be AC/DC, or he's trying to be Aerosmith. And, he was being him. It's like, yeah, I'm going to show you something different. And unfortunately, I don't have the track listing on there, but I don't know what song came next. I'm sorry, I don't have it up. I don't. Sorry, dude. But then he had another rocker, which to me is a banger, in Bambi. And he's showing like, I can do some R&B. I can, as Ernie would say, put out the day droppings joints, but I can pick up this guitar and I can go riff for riff. Stroke for stroke. I don't know what you call that. Strum for strum, I guess, with any guitarist out there and put out a banger and make you respect me. And then, of course, he has Sexy Dancer, which, again, for my sensibilities, I'm like, okay, it got one verse and the rest is instrumental. I wasn't used to that. So that was kind of like, what the heck is going on? Okay. I mean, that's kind of ill. Sexy Dancer. But I'm like, okay, where the lyrics at, homie? but the more that I listen to it, I'm like, okay, that was a disco track at another era. I mean, a little couple years earlier, that probably would have been number one if that was given to Earth, Wind, and no disrespect. I'm just saying, if that was given to Earth, Wind, and Fire because they're established, if that was given to Diana, Donna Summers, that would have been a number one. But the fact that it was maybe the fourth track that became a single and kind of got a little bit buried within the greatness of his song just speaks to who he was. And then you got Still Waiting, which to me can probably go toe to toe as far as ballads with I Feel For You. I prefer, no disrespect, I prefer the Shaka version better, but Still Waiting, timeless ballad classic, and one of those you can put that on. You're trying to romance your girl. She gonna feel that, plain and simple. So being able to see, there you go. I know your mind. I know your mind.
You don't know me.
So yeah, I'm glad. I'm sad as the fact that I didn't listen to this album earlier, but I'm glad that I did when I did, because I was able to appreciate those songs. Because as you grow up and you realize that not every great song is released as a single.
All right, man. I guess we can just close the show right there. Well,
I asked if you wanted me to stop.
No, you go. I'm just joking. You touched on some things we want to get in deeper into, but let's just continue this sort of train of thought. Alina, when was the first time you? I mean, ask not even when you heard it first, but when you even realized that was an album. That's the second album. When did you first hear about
it? So I had to say my earliest recollection with this album had to have been when I was around 5 years old, like listening to the whole album from start to finish.
Wow.
And I've talked to you about this before, but I've been a Prince fan like my whole life. Like, that's why I think I took it so hard when he passed, because I didn't know a life without Prince. I really did. Like, I grew up being a Prince fan because my mom was a fan, and she had all his albums. And what she had was a really thick, like, CD book, a really thick one. And I would flip through it and play. I had a little CD player, and I would just like pull one at a time and put it on, play it, listen to it from start to finish. Kind of like how you guys do with records, but I just grew up in a much later time, so CDs was for me. And I wish I could tell you what my thoughts were, but I was 5 years old, so I have no recollection.
Yeah, when you started to really appreciate music, when did you start to think about it?
Well, I think I started appreciating the album for the first time probably within like the last 3 years. Like, I actually took a listen back to the album from start to finish, and I was like, dang, there's some good songs on this album that I should have been listening to a long time ago. Like songs like When We're Dancing Close and Slow. Like, that was a song I think was too mature and slow for my young brain back then, but now I can appreciate that. It's like slow, melodic, like, and just like feel it, let it play the whole way through, and I'm just like, repeat, like play it again. Like, so I think I appreciate that. Oh, I know for a fact I appreciate that album way more now than I did when I was a kid. But yeah.
Okay. Violet.
So for me, it's pretty much the same. Y'all already know, the ones of you that know me know my dad was a huge Prince fan. I call this my parents' Prince, because this is like when they would go to shows and all that kind of stuff. And similar to Alina and Ampu, really, I don't really remember the first time I heard these songs, because this was back when people had mixtapes, and my dad would have he would have mixtapes that would have these songs on them. So for me, I remember like Still Waiting. I remember being a kid and thinking that was a woman singing that song. Later on in life, I realized it was Prince, but I remember thinking that was a girl. That much I remember.
Wasn't there? I should have had this in front of me. Didn't a female remade this song?
I cannot remember. See, like Do Me Baby, I know for a fact was Melissa Morgan, and I remember my dad would prefer to hear her version of it. And same thing with I Feel For You. I remember Shaka Khan's version, because in those days that was kind of a big deal. So that's kind of how I'm the same as everybody else. I have to think about Still Waiting, but the version, because I listened to it again the other day, and I remember thinking it was a girl. I did. I'm not gonna lie. I was a kid. Sexy Dancer is that's like, I call that my old school. Like if I'm at a Prince event, like we're at Paisley and they play it, I'm definitely gonna dance. Love that song, that disco thing. I like disco. This album for me, so I've been kind of looking at this Rick James thing. Y'all know that is so entertaining to me, the rivalry that they have. And I was looking at this video that he was talking about Michael Jackson and Prince kind of being tokens because they were being accepted on the other side in terms of music. MTV was playing them but not playing him. I think this is one of those albums that kind of helped Prince get there. There's stuff on there that sounds like rock. There's stuff that sounds like country. Like, so Still Waiting is kind of country. With You, which I love, that is the sweetest song, but it does kind of sound like country. And then Amp, who already mentioned it, but Bambi, that literally is one of my favorite songs, period. That's rock out. But what I noticed he did was he played it a certain way on the records, but then with different bands, he would bring his thing to it. I think it was that situation where you kind of get in the door, and then once you're in, you do what you do. That's the way I look at this album, is he gets him in the door everywhere, and then he can do what he does when he arrives.
All right. Still Waiting. It was, I don't know who remembers her. It was Rainey Davis, if I'm not mistaken.
What year is that one?
87. And then this may not even be the one that I'm thinking of, but, actually, maybe, yeah, it was in 87. I want to say it was on BET a lot. That's why I remember. I remember seeing Donnie Simpson's face.
Still Waiting?
Well, I know
Still
that.
Waiting. Yeah, it actually says it charted higher than Prince.
Just like Do Me Baby, because I know that one did real well.
Yeah, that was
really good. It's really good. And I feel free.
Yeah, so quickly, my story of that is, after Purple Rain came out and we just would enamored with Prince, and then realizing like there's all these other albums that he has as well. And I just remember going to Tower Records, and it was like I would just systematically buy one of the ones I didn't have. So we had got Dirty Mind, and we're blown away by that. It's like, oh, let's go get that other one where it's just him on the cover. So we went and got the Prince one, and I remember playing it like, and when I Want to Be Your Lover comes on, I was like, I know this song. I was like, oh, this is this dude. And then just listening to the rest of the album, and it was just like, it was so different from Purple Rain and the B-sides and stuff. And I was like, damn, this brother is incredible. Like, how did I not hear about this? And this is a different time in terms of how music came out. Everything was very much regional. And where I lived in Seattle was very small Black population, and it just wasn't popping out here. But as I said many times on the show, when I went to Houston back in the early 80s, Prince was the man. Like, I didn't know. Well, I was like, what are you guys all excited over? It was this dude. So I can imagine, yeah, in that area, they was bumping that album day one and all that. I get it. So that's how I got into the album. And this album, as I was thinking about this got a lot of classic Prince songs on here that become big hits for other people. And I think that's so remarkable. His second album, his songwriting is to the point now where he's writing great R&B songs, kind of pop songs that I think the execution of when he made them, and then just who he was at that time in his career, he was essentially the new kid on the block. He didn't have the juice of Shaka Khan or some of these other people who go to remake some of these songs, where I think they would have been just as big, because they're still great songs. But again, I don't think his power as an artist, not of his talent, but just of who he wasn't going to propel them to the top, unless it was just like a runaway, easy, no-brainer song. Like, in my opinion, I Want to Be a Lover. It's like anybody who hears that, it's like, oh, that's the shit. What is this? You jam into that. There's just no question to it. I Feel For You. The Pointer Sisters covered the song on their album So Excited, which was a big album. Rebe Jackson covered the song on her Centipede album. Justin Timberlake and Britney Spears sang the song in the Mickey Mouse Club.
Oh, okay.
Right.
That's wild. There go Justin. But anyway, this, and then also, of course, Shaka Khan, which is the first time I heard the song was the Shaka Khan version, and I remember when that came out, that song was major. I mean, it was one of those songs that was a forebearer of, I think, the next wave of talent in hip hop and muse with R&B and all that stuff. Because you had, of course, Shaka Khan on that song, Grandmaster Melly Mel. You know, that's what kind of made this. Shaka Khan. I was like, ah.
Yep.
And then, of course, you got a legend.
To this day, you cannot say her name without
saying
Shaka.
True. True.
And then you got Stevie Wonder playing on the song. Like, I can only imagine the Princess. I wonder if he was like, God damn, Stevie Wonder playing on something I wrote. And then Shaka Khan, which we know he loves Shaka Khan. So, and then that song becomes a massive hit. It's a #1 hit, wins Grammy. I think she won a couple Grammys for the song.
I have a question. Has he ever talked about that song? Because I would love to know, what did he think about that rendition of it? You know, how
I'm
he
sure
took it.
he loves Shaka. Isn't this the song that he wrote for Patrice Rushen? I feel like it is.
Yeah, it was one of the songs it says he offered it to Patrice Rushen and she refused it, which I could see. Patrice Rushen was bad on all avenues.
He had a crush on her when he wrote this song, so we'll have to look that up. But I think that's the way that story goes.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I feel for you. What other one we're talking about? Still Waiting. That's another song. There was another song I was going to mention. Can't remember off the top of my head.
I have to admit, another underrated track was "It's Gonna Be Lonely." I just love
the harmonizing. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you guys.
That's a new favorite of mine.
Oh man, that's one of them songs. As a dude, you know what I'm saying? You be at home, you start playing your music, and it's like when you can have a Sade. It's in that Sade song kind of category to me. It's like when you put that on, man, give me a beer or something. You know, you in there crying. Man, you love it. I'm serious. With all that said, what's give me you guys' top 3 songs, go-to songs on this album? Let's start with Alina.
Top 3. Okay. Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad is definitely on that top 3 list, because that guitar solo at the end gets me every time. Just takes it to like to the top. When We're Dancing Close and Slow, I talked about that one earlier. And then I'd honestly say It's Gonna Be Lonely. I think a few years ago I would have said I Feel For You. I would have had that on the top, but It's Gonna Be Lonely. I think 3 now. Yeah.
How about you, Violet?
So for me, the first 2 are real simple because Bambi literally is one of my favorite songs, period. So Bambi and then Sexy Dancers. I love that song. And then for a third, they're all kind of tied, the rest of the songs for me. I guess I'll go with Why You Want to Treat Me So Bad, because I really like of course, the guitar, but the lyrics for that song are really good for me.
Okay. And Pooh.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and name the song that absolutely should be the no-brainer. I Want to Be Your Lover. That's classic. It's timeless. That could be released 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts. Now it'd probably still be a banger and a #1 hit song, in my opinion. You know, because you got to get the machine behind it. Still Waiting. I'm just saying that right there is just, you know, vulnerability, as well as, you know, a nice little ballad love song that you can put on and, you know, groove with your woman to it. And then lastly, Why You Gotta Treat Me So Bad. Absolutely, the album track is a really good musical composition, but to get the full effect, you gotta listen to some of those controversy live shows where oh my God, he plays this out. He has a nice little intro, then he has an outro. It's just amazing how he did that. I just wish he would have. I know in the vault it's there. Please, estate, find a nice copy, remaster, whatever you got to do, put that out. I will go ahead and spend the 99 cents on iTunes and get that.
Hilarious. All right. My top 3, and it actually is in order how they're on the album, is Still Waiting. I love that song. That's like I love that song. I Feel For You. It took me a while to like this version because I was so used to the Shaka Khan version, and the Shaka Khan version is dope. I would argue to say that is probably the best Prince cover that I can think of. It just stands on its own. But I now love the Prince version. I can't even imagine why it wasn't a hit because I listened to it. I guess it does sound dated, and we'll kind of get into that later, but I love it. Love it. And then It's Gonna Be Lonely. The first time I heard it, I loved it. I was shocked about it because you said something, Ant, the vulnerability. I couldn't wrap around my mind that this was the same guy who I had seen on the screen and at the time with Purple Rain. I was like, God, I didn't know he would make a song like this. It just seems like he was just literally lonely. And I was a teenager when I kind of heard it. So it just kind of gets into that angst and all that kind of stuff. I was just like, God, this song is sad as hell, but it's such his vocal performance is so like emotional, and he was singing on this album. That was the thing too that struck me. I was like, man, this brother, this R&B. But anyway, so those are my 3.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Jump in. Go ahead.
Because you said singing on this album, and I think for those that come into, like, if you started with the Purple Rain, of course, Sign of the Times, Batman, and I'm just going because these were some big songs, most mainstream, Diamond and Pearls. You're hearing him sing mostly with y'all gonna go ahead and kill me. I don't know how you do the layers of the voice, bass. I don't know the other ones, but you hear him with falsetto, and the whole album is falsetto, which could probably be shocking to you if your frame of reference is Purple Rain, where he's screaming out there with this masculine, manly voice, and then you come to Prince and he's starting off, I ain't got no money, and you're like, whoa. It could be like, wait, what the hell is this? Because and then you go into the next song, more falsetto. And the thing is that he's giving that to you all the way throughout the album, and he's killing it. You're just sitting there thinking that he's laying the groundwork for amazing falsetto performances on Do Me Baby and Adore and Call My Name. No, not Call My Name. I'm sorry. I can't think of some other. But I'm just saying, it's amazing where you see him perfecting it.
Absolutely. And also wanted to bring up too, I think it's good to put this album in context of what else was going on when it was released. Because I think for a newer person, even when I heard it, I could hear the influences of disco. And at the time I heard that disco was in the past per se, and even more so today. So I think when you hear it, when I mentioned earlier, does it sound dated? Well, it does sound like it is a product of its time. I don't know if you call that dated. That's history. But some of the big songs, and I'm kind of sticking to the R&B because that's where this was the lane where this was sort of at. But you got classic songs like September, Earth, Wind and Fire, Aqua Boogie, Parliament. And these are songs that came out in 79. This album comes out in October, but Prince is recording the album early 79. So I'm thinking all these songs sort of go into it, right? Bustin' Loose, Chuck Brown. He's the greatest dancer, Sister Sledge. Reunited, Peaches and Herb. That's one of my cuts. Ain't No Stopping Us Now. We Are Family. These are a lot of anthems. Good Times, Chic. And then right at the same time that this album drops, you know what the top song in R&B was at the time that this album comes out? I'm just you don't have to know, but I'm just seeing if you guys have any, if you want to guess.
Don't Stop Till You Get Enough.
Very close. it is knee deep. Not just, that's a monster jam. Right, Matt? So yeah, he's coming out. And yeah, that song was at the top. I think it was a #1 soul single. October 13th, October 20th. This album came out on the 19th. And then, songs like Ladies Night. And then later that year, of course, Michael Jackson drops Off the Wall. So, and that's probably, I'm not going to make this about a Prince Michael thing, but that album, of course, my mom had that, maybe everybody had it. So I knew that my attention was totally Michael Jacksonized at that point. But to say that this album comes out among a time of giants, man, and this is Prince's second album coming off of, Soft and Wet and all that, and basically got to come out the gate hitting. Like, everybody's dropping jams, so you have to have that monster jam that comes out. And I think he nailed it with I Want to Be Your Lover. Like Ant said, that song still rocks. It's a classic, period. You hear it all over the place, and it's just a testament to, I think, to show like Prince's ability even early on. This dude is somebody to keep your eye on. Like, don't sleep on this kid. And then I think even years later, I wonder if this was the album that sort of got people's attention to like, yo, he's got some ill songs on that album. You should maybe cover one of his songs. This guy's bubbling now, 3 or 4 years later, he's starting to bubble up. People starting to cover songs off of his first album. You don't really hear that from new artists. Like, people start, I'm gonna cover, I don't know who, it's a shame. I don't know who you would even say. There's really no producer, right? Well, I guess that would be like somebody, it's gonna sound crazy. That would be like some newer artist, or no, it wouldn't be a newer artist. It would be an established artist, like a Shaka Khan, whoever that. It would be like Here we go. It would be like Mary J. on her comeback album, and her big single was a Bruno Mars song that came out a few years ago. That's how outrageous. It seems crazy to think about it, but I'm saying, think of it back then. Prince was not mainstream. He was known in maybe the black charts and stuff. And an icon like Shaka Khan, who was kind of fell off a little bit, she comes back and she's covering this kid's song. Like, he's not even that known, but he's starting to bubble up. That would seem, I don't know if there are people thought that was crazy, or it was like, this song is banging. I wonder.
One thing I wanted to say about that is that if you notice, you guys already know he wrote for the female voice. And the thing about the songs that became hits, they're all females that are performing the songs, and the arrangement is different and all that kind of stuff. So I think some of it is him being known, but I also think the way that the songs are written, they just come off a certain way when a woman performs them.
I agree with that. And I think back then, unless somebody had told me specifically, I would have never known it had anything to do with Prince.
Right, exactly.
I had never heard the original, right? So I would have had no idea. But
go back and listen to that Melissa Morgan "Do Me Baby." I'm telling you, the
that was a hit.
Her voice, is still like right now today, it's amazing. And I look, now I love his version. Don't get me wrong. His live versions. Oh, I'm not saying anything about that. Just go back and listen to Melissa.
Interesting, yeah.
All right, I'm hitting play on the YouTube. I'm gonna see.
Oh, Melissa Morgan. Let me ask you guys this: if it was a new Prince fan came up to you and they were asking for some album recommendations, would you recommend this album to them to start with? Alina.
So it's actually funny that we're having this conversation because yesterday was my best friend's birthday. I was turning 22, and she asked me, because she knows I'm a fan, hey, like, could you put together like a playlist of some songs that you think I like? All Prince. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. That's like a Prince friend's dream, to be asked to create someone a playlist. Is the chance to create another fan. It's like, we hop at that moment. And so I would recommend this album depending on what your taste is in music, which I think is the rule of thumb when recommending any Prince music, because he has a large array of genres that he's dabbled in. So it's like you could really recommend anything to anybody, just recommend the right album. And so she likes artists like, I don't know if you guys know these people, but Daniel Caesar, he's really popular right now. If not, look into him. He's really good, great singer. She likes SZA, her. I know some people know her because she covered a lot of different songs and performed. But she likes those kind of like R&B, slow, smooth tracks. So I was like, okay. So I went through the whole, his whole catalog, which is large. And I picked out a lot of songs from this album, actually. So I actually have the playlist here that I made for her. And I put songs like It's Gonna Be Lonely. And I Want to Be Your Lover on there because I wanted to see if maybe she could get into something like that. I feel like it's just I don't even know how to describe it. It's not too crazy, but it kind of just dips your toe in the water just enough to say, okay, I see where you're going with that. And then everything else, I did put When We're Dancing Close and Slow on there also for her. And I asked her yesterday, I'm like, okay, what did you think of the songs? So she just skimmed through really quickly. She's like, these are really good. Like, I really like them. And I try to use songs that I feel like the artist that she likes now, if they were to cover these songs, it wouldn't be completely weird or out of the box, I guess. Like you could see Daniel Caesar or you could see her covering these songs. And you could be like, oh, like they do a good job. So she told me she liked it. So yeah, I would say, yes, you could recommend this album to a new.
Wow. Okay, let me ask you something. You mentioned those R&B artists that you mentioned. And it may be my ignorance because I'm not as versed in a lot of the newer stuff. But tell me your opinion. You're a little younger. You know music. Who got the R&B jams today? Where are the R&B slow jams? Back in my day, we used to put them on. I don't care who you were. You had your slow cuts, dudes, the ladies, everyone. There was the slow cuts. Who got the slow cuts today?
Man, you're gonna make me pull up playlist
because I know you had Jodeci, all these groups.
Well, I don't think we even have artists like that today, which is so sad. Like, music has changed so much, and it's sad to see. But I feel like we don't have artists like, the ones that you guys got to grow up with, musicians and like real singers, like singers, like singers, like
singing.
Yeah, like I feel like we don't have that. It's very few, but Daniel Caesar, he's really popular right now.
Okay, I'm gonna look him
and
up.
Look him up. He has some good music. I'm trying to scroll through and see like who what I say is like top of the R&B.
So you don't have a slow jams playlist? I guess maybe it's made up of older songs. I don't know.
Yeah, they're made up of a lot of older songs. Just because I don't know who I would recommend and say.
Would it be fair or even weird to say that hip hop killed R&B as we knew it?
No, I wouldn't say that. Not at all.
Because I just look at how
I don't think hip hop killed.
Because hip hop and R&B, where you'd have an R&B song and here's that rapper, or you have a rap song and here's that R&B person, and then you got people like Nicki and Missy and Drake who do that rap song hybrid. And
and that's really popular right now, the fusion of kind of like hip hop and R&B. So now a lot of rappers actually kind of sing too. It's odd. I like it, but
yeah, that's just an extension of what they were doing in the 90s. I mean, they was always doing. To me, Bobby Brown and that is in a sense
absolutely
the same sort of thing. But
yeah.
I'm gonna go back to your point. I know we're deviating a little bit. I think the labels killed, the industry kills popular R&B, but the artists still exist. They didn't stop making that music. They just maybe not promoting those cats like they used to. But I don't know. I think I know for a fact there is R&B today, but I just don't. I'm just curious, like, back then, certain songs would come on, everybody go, oh shit, hey. And I was just curious, what are those jams today? You know what I'm saying? For the young folks, I know they be at their parties. I don't know if they have parties like that. I don't want my daughter to be on them, but ones where they're getting it in. So I was just curious, like what, what those songs were. But it's all good. It's all good. Aunt Pooh, would you recommend this album?
As your first foray into Prince stuff?
Yeah, if I was a newcomer.
No, and only for the sense that I would want to provide them with the most diverse amount of music where you can see the full range of Prince. Whereas this, and it may be to who you're recommended it to, because maybe they just are an R&B person, so maybe. But overall, I want them to feel the spiritual songs, the day dropping songs, the I love you songs, the rocks, the ballads. So there are other albums that go run the full gamut of Prince's full capabilities. Not that it's not a disservice to Prince. It's just that he's, as they would say, is in the pocket of that R&B disco of that era. So no, I wouldn't, but I would definitely say it is an essential listening to. But that's your first.
Okay. Man, as you were saying that, I would think, I think this album touches on all of the classic Prince tropes, though, in a sense. He's got the super pop R&B-ish type of song. He's got the funk. He's got the rock song. He actually has some ballads on here. I mean, even for his second album, he sort of sets the template here a lot stronger. And we see this same sort of stuff carry out through his rest of his career. But yeah, I mean, he had the rock song, he had the funk jam, he's singing the ballads. There's a lot going on. I would say this, and I'm going to Violet. Musically speaking and production wise, I would argue this may be one of his strongest sounding, fuller sounding albums. Like, there's not as much drum machine on this one. He's playing the drums, he's playing all the instruments. This is not programmed, it's, what I mean? Like, he's playing that stuff. And I even think the engineering is better than most of his albums that follow this. The way that this sonically sounds is absolutely incredible. I think that says a lot. But
here's one thing I would say, because we always speak of that MPLS sound. I think here he was developing it. Whereas if you want to say quintessential Prince, like a first album to listen to, you might go to 1999, you might go to Purple Rain, you go to Sign of the Times, where you get that MPLS sound that now he's perfected it. You can really hear it. Whereas this one sounds a little too closer to what was the R&B and disco at the time.
Yeah, you definitely hear the influences.
I agree with Ampu. Like, almost, I would have said exactly what you said. Michael, you talked about it sounding dated. We don't like to use that word because it sounds like a negative thing, but it sounds of the times. To me, it sounds like he was doing kind of what he thought people would want to hear at the time, versus 1999 is Prince is doing Prince, and it's a sound that everybody wanted to sound like. Then you start having, after that, groups like Rockwell and stuff like that, where we want to sound like that. So I agree with him 100% on that.
Interesting. I want to argue you guys on that, but I'm gonna let it go. No, I mean, go ahead.
Well, no, you finish. I was gonna say I actually looked up a few of the artists, going back to what you asked me before.
Oh, go ahead.
Like, who you asked me who was like the R&B guy of today, and there was a few names that I found. So I think if you ask somebody my age who's on their R&B playlist, you would see names like Frank Ocean, The Weeknd, Daniel Caesar, like I named before, Miguel, Brent Faiyaz. I don't know if you guys have heard of him, and Gold Link. Those are popular people right now.
Yeah, absolutely. The Weeknd.
Yeah.
I haven't really listened to his stuff. I don't know. For some reason, it doesn't click for me. I'm not saying he's not good. He's super talented.
I agree. He's not for me, per se.
Alina, what's the Michael Jackson knockoff song that he has? I Feel You Coming. What's it?
See, I don't even listen to him. I could even tell you. I can find fast.
I know, Mike, you probably heard it before and didn't realize it, but that'd probably be a good entry point. That song, he's definitely aping MJ. You would swear that was written for him or came from Thriller or Off the Wall.
Yeah. All right. Um, Violet, so you would not, Violet, I think you answered the
Well,
question.
no, I wasn't saying that I wouldn't recommend the album. We've met before, so you know my answer is going to be it depends. It depends for two reasons. I always tell people the first thing they tell you in law school is every answer is it depends, because the facts change your answer. But the other thing is I do teach, and I've taught elementary school all the way to law school. Who is my audience? What are they trying to get out of it? What is, you know what I mean? I need some context for their entry point into this. So I liked a lot of what Alina said. I mean, that's what she basically said, is she knows that this person likes the slow jams, R&B kind of thing. So she went with songs that would match up to that. I always tell you guys, if a person, what do they want to know about Prince? What are they trying to do? I do agree with Aunt Pooh in terms of the MPLS sound, like in Minneapolis sound. I would go with 1999 if that's what I was trying to introduce. But again, if it was a person who was interested in rock, or if it was a person who wanted to see his range, I might introduce this one. I think I Want to Be Your Lover is one of those songs that's so important to his career that it'd be hard to pass it up. But so yes, my answer is it depends.
Okay, yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think songs like "I Want to Be Your Lover" is so quintessential that it almost makes the argument to me like, if nothing else, they need to hear that if they haven't. But I think the album. So when we talked about being dated, all Prince's albums are dated to the times that they came out. It's not a bad thing. To some people, the MPLS sound is dated, but that's the sound of that time. Some may think that Emancipation sounds dated, but it sounds like the 90s. Sounds a reflection of that. You know, I think all of his stuff sort of has the times that they were in, and they match that time. This album, I think, is great because you can hear it comes from a certain time, which is nothing wrong with that. You can pull the Beatles or all these other groups that from a certain time. But I think if you said, man, this cat was like, I don't know, 20 or something like that, and he did this, and he's the only one playing most of this stuff and is recording, it's incredible. Like, who has a second album like that, you know, and then has people cover the songs years later? I think it's a masterful album in context. You know, coming off of that first album, he upgraded his game to come with that, and it was banging, and it had heart to it. And I just think the production is very sharp and tight. You'd be like, okay.
I have to disagree with you on the
Go
sound
ahead.
of the time thing.
Yeah.
So I will agree for you, because it's 1978, the Prince album. Those definitely sound of the time. The rest of the albums would be dated if you thought in terms of 2020, but they were ahead of the time that they were made. You understand what I'm saying?
No,
So
I agree with you.
So I go back and listen to songs and they sound like that would be all right now, right? But those albums, those first couple, when it seemed like he was kind of more finding his thing, to me, they sound like what was happening around that time, because they seem to be more influenced by what was happening. The other albums to me sound like he was influencing what was happening around him more. That's just the way I see it.
I hear you. I say this. I think if you look at it, if I separate myself from Prince, and I'm going to say, I'm going to pull up the Sign of Times. And if I was a student of music, but I didn't necessarily know Prince like that, I would listen to that album and I'd be like, wow, this is very interesting. I know I've heard of this guy. This music, some of this music, it sounds like Sly Stone, or it sounds like he's doing these other types of R&B stuff. It's very interesting. I can also hear some of I say the tropes a lot. Some of the tropes I know of Prince are in here, but I could hear him like he's doing this type of things. That's when I say it's dated. I think at the time, yes, it's groundbreaking in context of its release. But I think if you pull it back in history across all rest of the music, you could kind of trace back what is influencing Sign of Times very heavily. Same way with even some of his stuff in the 90s, I can be like, oh, he wanted to do some R. Kelly or some Teddy, or you know what I mean? But at the time, for Prince, that sounded groundbreaking. You know, Get Off. If I was a student of music and I listened to Get Off, I would be like, oh, Prince is rapping. Like, this sounds great, but he's being influenced by the times, but he's doing his own version of it. But at that time, I was like, whoa, how did he learn how to do this style? Like he's flipped it. So that's what I'm saying is dated. But I say to say I agree with what you're saying. I was just looking at it a little different in terms of that. Yeah, I mean, when his stuff dropped, it was the unexpected. You didn't know what to make of it. It was like, I thought he was going to go this way, but he goes this way, just like, oh, okay, this guy. But and that's interesting too. If I'm sure he had some fans at this point when this was released. I wonder, did they see this album? And I would imagine they didn't. Was it like a departure from the previous album, or it's like, man, he just upped his game, but it's not what I didn't. It's not unexpected, as opposed to the next album. Was like, yeah, I don't think anyone expected him to go that direction. Like, whoa, what is going on? And maybe that's when he learns to, okay, I got to really redo it every time. Now I'm gonna show my ass. I ain't got nothing to lose. Let's go. But yeah, this album, like I said, this album is a nice follow up to the previous one. It just got it's a little more refined. His musicianship is getting better. The confidence and the voicing is getting better a little bit. But I guess I'm saying, I wonder, is it more like a safe album almost?
I think that's a good way to put it. Like I said, I really do think in terms of that being able to be commercial at that time, because I mean, it's 1979. It's a different time in terms of with the charts separating music out to being Black music versus white. You have that whole thing going. And if you got categorized as Black, that meant that you didn't get to go into crossing over and all that stuff, which meant you made less money and all of that kind of stuff. And in my opinion, just going backward, like right now, going backward and listening to it, to me, it sounds like this is what gets you to be able to cross over, because you do kind of have to do this thing that makes you palpable to certain groups. That's honestly, I didn't think about it that way in the past. But like I said, I was listening to Rick James fussing about MTV and I thought, yeah, maybe that's what this is.
And quickly, just to speak of his style at the time, visually, I always think, of course, you think back to the, I think Ampu had to step out, think back to the Dick Clark performance. I know it's a lot. I would imagine at that time, that was the first time a lot of people saw him and saw him perform. I look back at the videos and even just some of the concert footage and stuff. It's like the way he looked, when I look back at it now, it doesn't match what I thought he would look like while listening to the music. He was a way more like, compared to what it sounded like. I would assume he was going to be some smoothed out, brother, maybe he had the long hair, but it was nice and styled, slick back. But he was actually visually, it was a wild, it's like, whoa, this guy is almost a rock. He looks like a rock performer or something. That's very interesting, because you don't see that a lot, particularly with an R&B thing. But then when you see the artist, he looked like he's a punk rocker or something. Like, whoa, what? So that his style was always on point. He was always on some action.
Absolutely.
Any final things you want to say on this album? Last things you want to throw in there that I've forgotten or we haven't gotten into? All right. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, when you asked us earlier what our favorite songs were, it really proved to me, like, this album is so good from, like, start to finish, because the moment I think I have my top three, Violet says her top three, and I'm like, oh, that's my top three too. And then Andrew says his top three. I'm like, I like those top three too. And so it's just like, damn, like this is a really, really good album. And although it is very specific to the time when it came out, it's just one of those albums I don't think I could ever stop listening to. It's just so good. It's just so good.
Yeah. It's a classic. So if you haven't, it's one of the albums I would not be mad if they did like a deluxe edition of it. Because some of those songs, I know those songs he wasn't finished playing. Those songs kind of fade out. I need to hear the whole jam. Yeah. I'm like, stop it. Yeah. He was getting down. One of the best Sexy Dancer. If you haven't heard the 12-inch version of Sexy Dancer, please go on YouTube or something. That's badass. Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't hear that till way later, but Woo!
Yep.
Yeah. I listened. I was like, they should have just had it on the album like that.
Well, and then they did some stuff on 1999 that included "Sexy Dancer" and remixed in with it, and it is just every time you hear that song, it's always good. That I love that song.
I was gonna say, Violet, they played that at multiple parties that weekend, and every time the whole place,
you got it
every time it's a hit.
Yeah, man. Yeah, he was a bad boy at that point, man. Anyway, well, ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed that. We tried to give y'all a little deeper dive into the album. I would suggest you go listen to it now that we've talked about it, and just listen to those songs. Put some headphones on and just like go deep into it, because it'll take you somewhere. And especially the way it ends, like I said, that's one of them. You be in there, it's gonna be a long man, because this, I mean, you already know the way his voice sounds, and like I would just be like, it would be a head buster if you found out like he recorded a lot of those sessions when he's doing his vocals, and you could just like see him just like, and you probably just watch it and die. It's like,
yeah, all that harmony and all that.
Yeah. That's the thing too. This album, it's got some great harmonies. I be thinking, man, was he just was probably just practicing, kept making songs and just getting better and better, man, and learning new stuff. And like, okay. And there's just so many details in the vocals. Like, yeah. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed this. Violet, where can they find you online?
You guys can find me mostly on Instagram, Violet ESQ. And then I have Violet V Interactive website. And lately we've been doing a lot of Clubhouse. So if you have the app, you can join us for those 1-800, they're like 1-800 party line calls.
Y'all be going like 10 hours or something crazy?
Yeah, well, we had one that was literally 18 hours, which is ridiculous. I don't suggest doing that again. But that's where you can find me. And actually, that's how Alina and we first became familiar with each other, was through that.
Okay. And Alina, where can they find you online? Shout out your YouTube channel.
Well, I was going to say, you can find me anywhere with my name, Alina Saldivar. I use my name. Maybe I shouldn't do that for safety reasons, but I do. So Instagram, Alina Saldivar, YouTube, Alina Saldivar, Clubhouse, Alina Saldivar.
There you go. And shout out to Ampu. I think he had to go do some daddy duties. Salute to all my fathers out there as I'm recording this. Father's Day is tomorrow, so salute to you. And listen, we want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much, everybody on YouTube. Big Sexy. Last thing, shout out to this brother named Simbarash. Met Simbarash late 90s in the Prince chat rooms and stuff. I think he was a teenager at the time, and then started doing the podcast, and he started listening to the show. I know he was like a musician at the time. He was trying to get into that, and then I'm not telling all your business, sir, but I just think it's his incredible story. I had never, so I just knew him from afar, right? And he had wrote a book. He did like a fiction novel. He had sent it to me, and he had wanted me to give him a blurb, and he put that on the book. I was just honored, like this young brother's doing his thing. Then he started taking pictures. I noticed he would post pictures online a lot. He started getting into photography. At this point in the day, he is like flying all over the world, shooting fashion photography. I believe he is featured in New York Times every week. Doing his thing. And so finally, over 20 years, me and this young brother finally met yesterday. He was in Seattle doing some work, and it was such a pleasure to meet him and to just see him rise and doing his thing. He has such great, nice things to say. And sometimes you never know the effect that you have on people and the little things that you do that people are sort of watching. And he definitely showed me that we should really be cognizant of, just how we touch people and recognize your own greatness and stuff. So I say salute to Simbarash, 20 years making, the young man's doing his thing. And a lot of you know him in the community, but yeah, just a good brother, man. Wanted to shout him out. With that said, work it like a job. We'll see you next time. Peace. All right.